Welcome to this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast. I'm your host, Cyril Gerald Quinn, going solo tonight. Was Rob Sapp. It's still had to give him, we had to give him a vacation. He'll be back, for the NBA playoffs. Hope he certainly is enjoying his time away from the podcast. I know he'll be ready to go come mid to late April. But we begin with some NBA. We'll do a lot of NBA on this podcast, as this is my first sports podcast since the Super Bowl show last month. With Kansas City and Philadelphia. So now we are all in. I'm all in on with the NBA and what's going on. It has been just a tremendous season in terms of on the court. Now, I'm certainly the NBA can't be happy in terms of the recent going on happenings in Memphis, and that's of course where we begin with one Ja Morant, who is still up until this point, the last report that I read was going to be away for the team for at least another 4 games. We all know what transpired over the weekend, what transpired on Friday, or I should say Saturday morning, after a Friday loss to the Denver Nuggets in Denver, in Colorado. And he goes to a club. It's around 5:30, 5:20 a.m., and he brandishes a gun on his IG in the club on his IG post. Immediately, of course, this immediately it was announced on over the weekend that he would be away from the team for at least 2 games, which we took as a de facto suspension. Nothing was announced though. No suspension, like from an official standpoint, as understandably so. Memphis is being, as an organization, was being very careful in terms of how they handled 23-year-old superstar who is the face of the franchise and one of the faces of the league. Um, and again, up until this point, he's going to be away at least 4 more games, and no charges will be filed in from that situation, which I'm not surprised at all. The NBA investigation is still ongoing. So there's been a lot of discourse, of course, in the last week about this situation. It really now I had heard about some of the things, especially the incident with the 17-year-old. We know what happened in Indianapolis not too long ago with the we talked about it with Rob Sepp on this podcast in regards to the red laser with his crew, uh, uh, pointing at the red laser at the Pacers players. Um, After that game, when some stuff had spilled over from the court, of course, one of his guys was banned from that arena for life, and he one of the guys from the Pacers said that they definitely thought that laser was connected to a gun. Nothing came out of that. The NBA did an investigation, determined that they couldn't have enough evidence to prove that there was even a gun present or that the laser was connected to a gun. But the thing that jumped out to me last week was the report about beating up the 17-year-old high school kid fully came out. Not the entire report, but because there's still some things, it is still sealed in terms of interviews and things of that nature. You just have Ja Morant and the 17-year-old going basically a he said type of ordeal. But that was that came out of the Washington Post, and then this thing kind of has exploded all over the national media. Here's what I'll say. So John Moran is 23 years old. The troubling thing about this was a couple of things. One, he has a father in his life. Number one, that's which is scary considering, which is scary from the standpoint of these things were happening while he has a father in his life who has been a major part of his life, trained him as a young kid. We see T. Moran around the arenas, around Jai a lot. We assume that how close they are. Um, and again, I don't know what their conversations are behind closed doors. I know a lot of people are getting on T. Moran. I'll get to that in a second. In terms of whether or not it's fair to be pointing fingers at T. Moran, I don't think it is, but I'll get to that later on. But the thing is, to me, I look at this as a case of self worth and I want to say perception. we've gotten to a place, and we saw this last week with the ridiculous, like, kind of discussion and reaction to the Michael B. Uh, Jonathan Majors picture that kind of broke the internet from a standpoint of with the reaction to it and masculinity and questioning of their sexuality, all types of shit. And this is kind of what this situation is similar from a standpoint to me of got to get away from. Uh, we have situations where black men, males in general, got to be able to like feel and have to be allowed to be human beings. And I mentioned I say that because you have this young man and who clearly there are some issues that go beyond uh, him trying to be a gangster, trying to be tough, or trying to prove that he's tough. When you read the statement that he made this weekend, it told me a lot. First of all, he didn't have to come out and say anything. Like he didn't have to release any, let alone apologize. He didn't. We've seen statements read. We've seen classic PR statements that we know uh were written down word for word verbatim. That was not this, not in the least bit. Uh what I saw from that statement was a young man in pain. And not all and again, this is the part where media people alike get themselves in trouble in regards to talking about what he has to lose, and he's included $1 billion athlete and all that. The money doesn't matter if uh if your heart, if your spirit, if your head isn't in the right place. It doesn't. This guy has all the money in the world right now. He has the sports world at his feet in terms of the opportunities he has. Look at the decisions that he's still making. So don't tell me about like the money, the motivation for him to do well or to make better decisions should be on the fact that he has a chance to earn this amount of money. That means, I'm telling you right now, that absolutely means nothing in comparison. That means nothing in terms of what he's dealing with within. Okay, it means nothing because the money could not protect him from himself. It couldn't. Period. So you hear that, and again, we live in a capitalist society, so I expected to hear, you have an opportunity to make this amount of money, and how could you blow it by doing, this, that, the third. I'm gonna get back to the part where, as a black man, being allowed to be human and being allowed to feel. Part of John Moran's problem seems to be seems to be to me a lack of self-worth, right? So he's trying to play. He's trying to have this. He wants his perception of a tough guy. He's not about that life. Yeah, like we know he's not about that life. But I say that not to challenge his manhood. And I think, and again, I'm going to correct myself. We got to be careful, especially how we talk to our youth and men coming up about the language we use as far as being able to show, to tell them, hey, this is not the way to go without seemingly challenging their manhood by saying you're not about that life. That phrase, that language, we kind of need to get rid of if we really want to make a difference as far as getting away from convincing young men, a Jai's age and younger, and more importantly, younger, that you can be the tough guy without being the tough guy. And what I mean by that is, Jai has made it to the NBA. It is almost impossible to make it to the NBA. You have a better time being a brain surgeon than making it to the NBA. To become an NBA All-Star, an All NBA caliber player, that is the that's like it's like a one in a that's like a 1 in a billion shot. Okay, from that standpoint, to get to the level that he's at, that is that's like he's in like the 99 percentile of all NBA players that I that kind of have ever played. Like let alone forget about just making an NBA, but to get to the level that he's at, that's hard. That's tough, and he should feel he should feel proud about that. And it takes a lot. The type of discipline, the type of focus, the type of work ethic that you have to have. That is the definition of tough. This guy was not. He was not highly sought out after like in high school. Like he was not. He wasn't. People were not talking about Ja being the next big thing. He went to Murray State. Okay, he went to Murray State. So that tells you all you need to know about what he has within. And this is where there's this perception of what is tough and what is not tough. And you have kids growing up thinking that the street, thinking that being about their life or their perception of being about their life is something that should be not only glorified, but it's something that should be respected. And the stuff that I grew up on with in terms of like watching it from afar. I never was in the street, never had any desire to be in the street. But the stuff that you grew up on with music videos and things of that nature and things that you would see on television, let's be honest, it was all some bullshit. No snitching, whatever, street credibility. That's all some bullshit. It's all bullshit. Being a man, being a quote unquote bit mentally tough, go out there, get a job. If you have a family, take care of your family, do the right thing, help people. That's the tough guy. That's the mentally tough guy. And that needs to be conveyed to Jai because Jai has done up to this point has done all those things. He is a father. He's taking care of his family. He's the breadwinner of his entire family right now. He is the top guy on a young franchise that is a championship up and coming team. He's made it to the NBA. What the road he's had to travel to get to there and to make the way he's at should be applauded for being a strong, manly, tough black man. Period. That's what should be getting pushed. Instead, you have young men thinking that street life and things of that, waving a gun, things of that nature, the shit that we glorify uh day in and day out. Forget about being cool, but that's what should garner you respect. We gotta find a way to shift that narrative or to shift that mindset. You have to. Or we're gonna continue to lose, and we haven't lost jaw yet to that to violence or jail, things like that. But we continue to lose. We're gonna continue to lose our men, black men in particular, our boys of color, left and right because of that perception. Because that's all that street life is bullshit. It's all bullshit. It always has been bullshit. Period. And like I see a John Morant, and again, I would hope that I see someone who does not have a high level of self worth in that's going in the right direction. And you want to say, well, what are you talking about? How could he make it this far? How could he be in the NBA if he's not it doesn't have self worth? You could be like that. Self worth has nothing to do with talent or work ethic. It doesn't. It really doesn't. And for Jai, like I said, I hope somebody like this thing. He's going to have to get fixed from within. There's not going to be. Don't I can't see someone. I can't see one person, even his father, approach saying that, hey, you need to stop. You're throwing your life away. You're so and so and so on. Some shit that's painfully obvious. Like if he keeps going down this road, he will be out the league, and some it could jail and things of that nature could be in his future if he kept going down this road. Someone he needs to be. Someone needs to talk to him that has a voice of empathy, has a voice of reasoning, has a voice of I'm not trying to judge you. I'm let me be here for you in an intentional way. No one's perfect. You made these mistakes. How do we move forward from here? That should be the message to John Morant. And it's being reinforced in terms of look where you're at right now, as far as look how hard you had to work to get to where you're at. You don't like you like the positives of who he is should be reinforced if you're trying to convince him to go in the right direction. Like you don't have to prove your toughness to anybody. Your toughness is the fact that you are raising your daughter, your daughter. I think he has a daughter. I know he has at least one kid, maybe have two kids. Your toughness is the fact that you are the breadwinner in your family. That's what a man is. Waving a gun does not make you a man. I know you wouldn't. I would say this to him, but again, given that perception of what we how we this message that need to be sent to our men and boys of color, this does not make you a man. Flashing money, all the materialistic shit doesn't make you a man. It doesn't. And again, it gets back to that conversation, with this, with that was had last week in terms of, masculinity. What is really truly masculinity from that standpoint? What is really a man by definition? And again, when I see the statement that he made about, um, I gotta get some things, worked out. Got to work on myself. Trying to pull it. Let me pull it up now, because it was a very introspective statement. Again, something that he did not certainly have to say. Like he didn't have to come out with that statement. I'll pull it up right now. Well, I can't even get it up right now. Pull it up right now. But basically, it was something that he didn't have to say. As far as like, he did not have like, to me that was a cry. It was a cry. That tweet was a cry out for help. It really was. It was that's why I thought that it was an authentic apology, because it was a cry out for help. Like this, that tweet screamed, "I need help." And the thing is, I hear, people talking about, well, he need is the element around him. He don't have the right people around him. Look at these situations. He has been the ringleader in all these situations. Okay, he's been the guy. Like he was the one that brandished the gun in the club. He was the one that beat up the punched the 17-year-old kid. I mean, he initiated that. He punched the 17-year-old kid. I know the kid allegedly threw the ball at him, but he threw the first punch in that situation, and his boys followed. They follow him. He's the one that's calling the shots with that crew, not them. He's not following them. They're following him. Period. So keep that in mind. Like he is the guy, and like he can get rid of some of his boys. He can't get rid of himself. As far as the T Morant, hearing that, people saying, people calling out T Morant saying, "Hey, now's the time to be a father, not kind of like a sideshow or who wants all the attention." First of all, you have no idea the conversations and the relationship that John Morant, T Morant have behind closed doors. You don't know if you think that T Morant hasn't spoken to John Morant about these situations and saying like, look, you might need to just chill a bit, so on and so on. I guarantee you, T Morant, that T Morant is benefiting greatly from John Morant's wealth, from John Morant's notoriety. We wouldn't know who T Morant was if it wasn't for John Morant. If you don't think T Morant is trying to do everything in his power to not have his son lose everything. And I'm not just talking about money, but talking about his career. Then like I think you just have to you're not paying attention or you're not just thinking from a logical standpoint. The bottom line is John Morant is a grown ass man. He's 23 years old. How many times have we made decisions that went against the will of our parents? Like it happens all the time in life. It happens all the time. So John Morant's not going to be the exception to that. And again, and here's another narrative that to me is complete bullshit. The idea that John Morant is actually about that life, but he just so happens to be a gifted basketball player. No, it's either one or the other. You don't see guys who are in the street and play basketball at this level and make it this far. It just who now sure would he like does it seem like he wants the perception he wants the perception of being a tough guy, sure, or don't fuck with me, yes, but I think of a guy who played in that was in the street that was hustling. Pee Wee Kirkland, who was a street ball legend in Harlem, New York, was like one of the great street ball legends of all time in New York, and who admitted that he was making more money hustling than he would have made playing in the NBA. He ended up choosing the street, and he never made to the NBA. Everybody speaks about this guy having all the talent in the world. He easily would have been in the league. He chose the street, and he didn't make it to the league. You don't make it to the NBA doing both at the same time. It's either one or the other. Period. It's either one or the other. Most of the guys that make that choice, all the guys that make that choice, fall well short of the NBA, even maybe, and some of them even well short of college if they of college and what have you. They don't make it to the NBA. Thugs don't make it to. There are no thugs in the NBA. None. There's not. There's like there's no thugs in college. There are no thugs in the NBA. There's nobody that's about that life in the NBA. And again, just because I say that does not make you soft. Not being about that life does not make you weak, doesn't make you soft. We need to get rid of that perception, that mindset, like in a real way. In a real way. Now, I don't think that who knows how many games John Morant will be away. I don't see this going for the rest of the regular season. I don't see that. Um, Adam Silver is not a. We know that he's not a guy who's going to hit the players over the head with a hammer. We know that he's not that player. He's not that type of commissioner. He's not David Stern. Now I heard a story from Gilbert Arenas on his podcast that kind of maybe clear some things up in regards to his suspension. Of course, when this story came out, Gilbert was trending because people tried to make the comparison with him and Javaar Crittenton bringing guns in the locker room, and they both got the 50-game suspension. Gilbert Arenas claims that it was not a 50-game suspension. He was not suspended for bringing guns in the locker room. He said that he basically was suspended for challenging David Stern, and he said he got strong armed by David Stern to take that suspension. That David Stern basically threatened to come after his contract if he did not accept that suspension. That by NBA rules, in terms of how they govern players with guns and things of that nature, they, the most that he could have been suspended was like 3 to 4 games, something like that. They couldn't prove that the guns were his. They couldn't prove there were a lot of things he said that they just could not prove. Could not prove in terms of that situation that he said that never came out. But he fell on the sword, and he fell on the sword because again, we talking about David Stern now. David Stern, one of the fiercest, most powerful commissioners in the history of sports. So with that being said, and I believe Gilbert when he says this, when he said that, because he made the way he broke down the story made perfect sense. But with that being said, Adam Silver is the complete opposite of that guy. Of what David Stern is. I don't see a situation where Adam Silver pushes John Morant to taking in terms of suspending him for the rest of the season. Don't see that. How long he will be away, I don't know. I think I'll say this. I think we'll see John Morant before the regular season is over. Like I think John, a couple of weeks, something like that, we will see John Morant. Maybe mid March, early April. That's my prediction, and he definitely will be back. Will be back for the playoffs without question. I'll be shocked if he were away for the rest of the regular season and beyond, and blown away if he did not return for the playoffs. But that's neither here nor there. Number one thing right now is for John Morant to take some time away, do some self reflecting, get around the right people. And I'm not talking about knocking his guys or what have you, but get around people who are going to be honest with him and empathetic with him at the same time, so he can start taking the necessary steps to get himself in a place mentally to where he is growing as forget about as a basketball player, but growing as a young man and as a person, as a young man, before we even talk about basketball moving forward. So mentioned earlier, the NBA has it's been really a remarkable season. Great games every night. Um, the Sixers have been in a number of just highly contested, high level games. They had a great win against Milwaukee on Saturday. You saw them against Boston a couple weeks back. That was an exciting game on a Saturday night where they almost beat the Celtics, blew a big lead. Celtics came back, had a great comeback. So the Sixers are playing well, and B certainly will be in the conversation for MVP. We'll talk about that later on with the MVP situation. But right now, the team to me that should be the story of the NBA as far as how well they're playing and all things considered their recent history is the New York Knicks. The Knicks just had their 9-game winning streak snapped, I think, last night against Charlotte, but they have been simply like outside Milwaukee, they have been the best team in basketball over the past 5 to 6 weeks. And listen, they have been an absolute laughing stock over the course of the better part of 20 years, deservedly so. One of the worst owners in sports. Just not being able to get free agents, having been toyed with and mocked by superstars with like Kevin Durant and what have you. But give them credit because they have built this team the right way. They are going for singles instead of home runs, piece by piece. The Brunson signing, and I was critical of the Brunson signing, but he has played at an all-star caliber level. He and Julius Randle have been spectacular. Randle's averaging like 25, Brunson's averaging like 23, and you relegated RJ Barrett to what he should be is probably the number 3 player on a team that could be a contending team. He is a third option on a contending team, maybe even a fourth option on a championship team. Because I still think the Knicks are one piece away from championship status. They still don't have that superstar that you need. Every team, if you're going to win a championship, you need a top 7 guy, top 7 to 8 guy. You have to have that caliber player to win a championship. Period. They don't have that guy, but they're one major piece away from getting into that conversation. Right now, they're going to make the playoffs? Could they win a round depending on the matchup? Sure. With the matchup, they could win a round, but they're going no further than the second round. They're not. But with that being said, they have put themselves in a position where if whoever that next superstar that is not happy, and you know that's coming, that's going to be a guy. It could be Embiid. Who knows if Philly coughs it up in the playoffs, loses, in the second round, doesn't get to at least the conference finals, if not the NBA finals. Embiid might. Harden's already been talking about. There's already been speculation about Harden to Houston or Harden just leaving in general. And B could be like, look, maybe I've done all I could do for this city, for this team. Maybe it's time for me to explore some options. Knicks would have all the pieces, draft capital to make a run at MB or to make a run at any superstar that could be demanding a trade. They have all the pieces. They have excellent young talent. They have all their draft picks. So they have put themselves in a great position moving forward. And this year they have been, especially the last 2 months, they have been a lot of fun to watch. They've had some big time wins. They have two great wins over Boston. One of them came without Brunson. Now, I know I don't think the Tatum missed that. Yeah, Tatum missed that game, but they beat the Knicks. They beat Boston with fully healthy last week in New York in a game that they controlled from start to finish, and then they beat Boston in Boston on, I believe, on Sunday or Monday. I think it was Sunday. I think it was Sunday night. Beat Boston in Boston without Tatum, but they didn't have Brunson, so that was kind of like an even Steven from that standpoint. Quickly had a big game, and goes Julius Randle. Julius Randle has been tremendous, uh, basically almost all year long, but especially since the turn of the new year. So they have been one of the best stories in the league, without question. Um, and again, we'll see what they do. It'll be more interesting to see how they construct this team in the offseason and what moves they will try to make to go to that next level. They're going to make the playoffs. They could win a round in the playoffs, depending on the matchup, but they're still one piece away from challenging for a championship. Um, Very tight race, interesting race for the number one seed in the Eastern Conference right now, with Milwaukee and Boston. As you look at the standings in the NBA, as of right now, you have Milwaukee right now is 2.5 games up on Boston. Boston has struggled. They lost three straight, including a couple of overtime games. 3 games in the loss column, by the way. Philly is what 4 games behind Milwaukee, 3 games in the loss, 4 games in the loss column, four games behind Milwaukee. So it's gonna be like, so if you're Milwaukee, Boston, Philadelphia, the goal obviously is the goal is definitely without question number one seed, because you don't want to have to go through two of those teams to get to the NBA Finals. As of right now, Boston and Philadelphia would be playing in the second round, the conference semifinals, right? Milwaukee would play Cleveland. Milwaukee would have basically like, depending on, you know, I mean, I'm looking at this to like who possibly Milwaukee would play uh in the first round. I mean, you're talking about possibly Atlanta or Toronto or Washington, Milwaukee in second round, Cleveland or New York. So that number one seed, the number one seed in the Eastern Conference is everything this year. Everything that number one seed, because the East is so top heavy. And even Brooklyn has played well. Miami is always a pain in the ass. We all talked about the Knicks and Cleveland. Again, Cleveland, Donovan Mitchell can be a problem in the playoffs. And Cleveland is 41-26 right now. Uh, 41-26, and we know they're a great defensive team. So that number one seed is everything in the Eastern Conference. As far as the West goes, again, I don't know what's going to happen in the West. Like I picked Denver to win the West before the season started. They are Denver, as we stand right now, is going to be the number one seed. That's not without question. But Denver, you know, excuse me, Denver could play Golden State in the first round. Okay, that's on the table, or the Clippers in the first round, or the Lakers in the first round. Like Denver, the Western Conference is so up in the air right now. Would I lean towards Phoenix? Do I think Phoenix has the best talent on paper and should be slightly favorites? Sure. But their room for error is very small, very slim. And I know they can score with anybody. I know Durant has been spectacular since he got to Phoenix, shooting close to 70%, averaging about 26 and 7, has fit seamlessly with Chris Paul and Devin Booker, as we knew he would. I mean, Durant can fit anywhere with any offense, any team. That's just how, he's just a perfect fit in terms of his style of play. Doesn't need the ball. Can do everything as an offensive player, as an offensive weapon. So we knew that what that fit would look like, and him and Booker have been just together. That is um, probably the best duo. Probably the best duo in the NBA right now. Those two, but they have a lot of question marks Watching that Dallas game, which was an exciting game, they teams went out. Dallas went out of their way to leave Chris Paul open, and then some other jump shooters open. So can Chris Paul make enough jump shots this year, and especially in the playoffs? Uh, I don't know. I don't know. They have a lot. They we know what we're going to get out of Durant. Know what we're going to get out of Booker. DeAndre Ayton, he's going to get double doubles and be a presence in the middle defensively. Question to me is, what what are they going to do? What's going to happen with Chris Paul in the postseason? Like what? Like they can't. You can't. You have to be like you have to have. Chris Paul has to have a pulse in the postseason in order for Phoenix to go to the finals. He does. He cannot. You can't have Chris Paul playing like he played last season in the postseason. They can't. Even with Durant on the team, they can't survive that. They can't. Like you can't have Chris Paul cannot be a liability. Does he have to be great? No, but does he have to be serviceable and be able to make some big shots during over the course to win you a game or two in the postseason? Yes, he has to be decent in order for them to get to the finals. He cannot be mediocre, or he cannot be what he was last year. Last year it was like how he played in that series against Dallas. He looked like he looked like he was shot. He looked like he was done. You can't get that Chris Paul again in this year's postseason. So the NBA moving forward, again, about 18, 20 games left. Well, this, I'm not going to get too much into the MVP discussion. I know, again, it's late in the season. We're far, of course, we could, it's definitely within reason, definitely the time to be talking about it as we have like a little over a month left. But here's the thing. It's a three-horse race as far as I'm concerned. With all due respect to Jason Tatum, Jason Tatum is not going to win the NBA MVP this year. He's not. His time will come. It's not going to be this year. You have Jokic, Giannis, and Embiid. Those are your three legitimate viable candidates for MVP this year. Period. Point blank. There's been a lot of talk, about the fact that Jokic cannot win another MVP because he hasn't gotten to the finals, or he's not like it would be crazy for a guy to win three straight MVPs and possibly not even get to an NBA finals. Here's what I'll say about that. I can make a case that Embiid should have won the MVP last year. Jokic should have won it 2 years ago without question. This year, I can make a case for Giannis, Jokic, or Embiid. You cannot you can't sit up here and tell me that Jokic is not having a MVP caliber season. He is averaging the triple double, shooting over 60% and on the number one team in the Western Conference, one of the best records in the league. He's been spectacular this year. Now, I'm not one to. I think Giannis should be the MVP. I think, in my opinion, the team has the best record. He is the best without question, not even close. He's the best player in the world, and without question, the best two-way player on the planet. In terms of, there's no player that impacts the game more on both ends of the floor than Giannis. Not Jokic, not Embiid, no one. There's no one. Period. With that being said, if Jokic wins the MVP again, okay, cool. Like I can't sit here and I'm not gonna go crazy and lose and be like and go up there and lose sleep over Jokic winning another MVP, winning MVP for a third straight season. Now, do I think it's a good look for him? Do I think it puts more pressure on him? Absolutely, because you look at it in the history of the league, only two other guys have won MVPs, three straight MVPs. You had Larry Bird, you have Wilt Chamberlain. Those 3 year stints, Larry Bird won 2 championships and went to the finals all 3 of those years. Wilt Chamberlain won a championship and went to the conference finals in both the years and those other 2 years. Well, I think lost in the NBA finals 1 year, went to the conference finals another year, but won a championship in 1967 with that Sixer team that is considered one of the greatest of all time. for Jokic to go to win the MVP and not get to the finals would be it would be a disaster. It would just listen. It wouldn't be a good look for him. For him, it wouldn't. It would. People would be all over. And even if he plays great the postseason, which by the way, that's another thing. Jokic, his postseason numbers or his you just can't argue with how great he's been in the postseason over the course of his career. Like his team, the teams have not lost because of him, not even in the least bit. And the teams that he has lost to either have gone to the finals or won the championship. He went. They lost in 2020. They lost to the Lakers in the Western Conference Finals after beating the Clippers, coming back from 3 games to one. He was spectacular in those playoffs. They lost to a better Laker team, LeBron and Anthony Davis, case closed. 2021, they lose to they lose to in 2021 Golden State. No, the Golden State was last year. They lost to Phoenix. Got swept by Phoenix. Phoenix that year was a championship caliber team. Um, and Phoenix went to the finals that year. And Phoenix had the best record in the Western Conference that year, I believe. Yes, they had the best record in the West that year. Last year, they lose to a Golden State team that ended up winning the championship. And they were playing without Porter and Jamal Murray. Jamal Murray also did not play in that series against Phoenix. So when he's had a healthy Jamal Murray, he's going to the conference finals. This year, they had a relatively healthy Jamal Murray. They had the number one record in the Western Conference. But with that being said, it just would look awkward and strange for a guy to have 3 MVPs and no championships or no finals appearances because it's never happened in sports. Like you go across and again, it's very rarely that a guy has won 3 straight MVPs in any sport. It's only happened a handful, not a handful of times. You had, Barry Bonds in baseball won 4 straight. Wayne Gretzky won 8 straight in hockey, but with a bunch of Stanley Cups, around them. Um, Nobody won 3 straight MVPs to our knowledge in football. Uh, who else? Again, I already mentioned Will Chamberlain, Larry Bird. Listen, he's not on the level of any of those athletes. He's not. I'm not even going. He's not. But he's a great player without question. One of the top 5 players in the league, and a guy who has done nothing but play great in the postseason in his very short career in terms of going every year he's played in the postseason. Even when his team hasn't played has lost, he has come to play in the postseason. So again, I think Giannis is the MVP. Again, I don't take the MVP as serious as a lot of people do because you have a situation where Steve Nash and Karl Malone have a total of 4 MVPs. Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant have 2. So when that transpired, I was like, the MVP. I'm sorry, I can't get all like I'm not gonna go crazy about the MVP when that's the case. So Lamar Jackson was franchise tagged by the Baltimore Ravens as the non-exclusive tag, which means, of course, that he can make up to $32.4 million. He can also negotiate with other teams. If another team were to negotiate and sign him, they would have to give up forfeit 2 first round picks to Baltimore, as well as negotiate a deal. But Baltimore, of course, we know can match any deal. Um, this so right now, it is a clear stalemate between Baltimore and Lamar Jackson. The NFL clearly is colluding against Jackson, and also more importantly against a fully guaranteed contract. They do not want to see another fully guaranteed contract. They don't. They don't. They're not. That would be a nightmare for the owners in their eyes. It'd be fun to watch in terms of the NFL and see how that would go, but the owners want no part of that. So as soon as Lamar Jackson, you have teams as soon as Lamar Jackson signed the non-exclusive, not signed, but as soon as Lamar Jackson was franchise tag, hit with the non-exclusive franchise tag, you had Atlanta, Carolina, and Miami basically saying thanks, but no thanks. Not even thanks, but basically we're good in terms of our quarterback situation, even though they're not good in terms of their quarterback situation. and the Commanders were rumored to be another team that dropped out. So that again, we know we've watched how the NFL moved. We watched it during the Colin Kaepernick situation. We know that they collude. You can't prove it, but we know that it can't be proven on paper or no hardcore evidence. But we know it. We know it's happened. I wonder. Like I cannot see Lamar Jackson not playing in 2023. Can't. Um, would I give him a fully guaranteed contract of like that in terms of the full amount of years, the like 5 years? No, considering injuries and style of play. I just wonder though if you'll see a team or even Baltimore try to give him fully guaranteed money, but a short term contract. I wonder if Lamar Jackson will be willing to take that type of contract where again, you don't get the total amount of years, but the contract is fully guaranteed for say like 2 years, for say like 2 years, with a third year being possibly being an out year for the team or for him, depending on not incentives, but like third year being an out. Maybe like a 3 year fully guaranteed team contract. Again, I can't see a situation where he does not play in 2023. I just don't see it. At the same time, he doesn't have an agent and he seems to be, he seems to not have drawn a line in the sand with saying that he's not going to accept anything less than a fully guaranteed contract. So there's going to have to be a middle ground somewhere if Lamar Jackson is going to be on the football field in 2023. I do believe that and we've seen crazy things happen in the NFL, and all it takes is one. I do think I would not surprise me if one team gave him a fully guaranteed contract. If there was one team that just got desperate or wanted to make a splash and just say, you know what, here you go. All it takes is one. That's all it takes. Would it shock me? No, no. But the bottom line is Lamar Jackson needs to be in the NFL next year. The NFL needs Lamar Jackson next year. Lamar Jackson can single handedly shift the balance of power if he gets with the right team in terms of like he can instantly make a team a Super Bowl contender. He really could, depending on the team. What is in the NFC right now, Pat, once you get past Philadelphia, and I'll give San Francisco the benefit of the doubt considering that they've done that Purdy will probably be back for the start of the season. And Shanahan has been great with with quarterbacks, despite not having a franchise one. Give San Francisco the benefit of the doubt. But outside of that, what is in the NFC? So I think Lamar Jackson will play football next year. Um, I don't think it will be with the Baltimore Ravens though. I think that relationship is dead in the water. To be honest with you, I don't think that I you know I don't think that I don't think that they would even give him if he were to say I would be willing to play play for a fully guaranteed contract on short for a short term fully guaranteed contract. I don't even think that they would even be be willing to give him that. Another team will in a heartbeat. I think another team would give him a short term fully guaranteed deal. And again, I don't think like if you're Lamar Jackson, sitting out does accomplishes nothing because you sit out, they can do the same thing and franchise you next year. Over the weekend, watched the Chris Rock special, um, Selective Outrage, and again, a lot of people reacted, knocking Chris Rock about how he came at Jada his kind of feeling like he, talked about the woke. He had a couple jokes on the woke audience, or how that's been running rampant throughout the course of society. The woke mob, whatever. Here's the bottom line to me about Chris Rock. The Chris Rock that we grew up watching would Bring the Pain, Bigger and Blacker, Never Scared, even Kill the Messenger, which was not very good, by the way. Kill the Messenger was okay. But those three, Never Scared, Bigger, Blacker, Bring the Pain, were certified classics and three of the great all-time stand-ups of in history. Period. They are all time. That version of Chris Rock is done, completely done. Now, I thought that with him working so much in the past 2 years with Chappelle, he's done a lot of touring the last couple of years. 2022, he's off to he's touring now. Thought that with that sort of repetition and uh working all the time, and that kind of practicing on his craft, that there was a possibility that he could somewhat return to what he once was, as a top comedian in the game. Uh, After watching the special, is like you just see that he is just so far removed from what he once was, and that guy is never coming back. I mean, because the bottom line is, number one, he had too many. He's got too much money. Like, he's too successful outside of comedy. As far as he's just not that guy anymore. He's not, you know, he's not that grinded of a comedian. Like, you watch those old episodes, you watch those old specials. There was you know, there was a thirst, a passion for comedy. Like, that guy, that Chris Rock in his 30s, that guy was hungry, and that guy was not cared about, did not care about what you thought about him. He would say anything, and not just for the sake of anything. There was a rhythm to it. There was an artistry to it, to what he was saying. He was as well read of a comic as far as current events, and being able to make that connection and making it funny as anyone. Um, Even that, he's not even like these this. I mean, this special wasn't even smart to me. It wasn't. The Michael Jackson R. Kelly comparison was ridiculous. That those are two. There's no comp, or there's no comparison. R. Kelly comparing R. Kelly situation to Michael Jackson. It's zero. It's not. R. Kelly went to jail and still in jail and will be in jail for a long time. Michael Jackson was never convicted. Like, so where we like that, you can't make that comparison. And he frankly has turned into a safe comedian. That was the ironic thing about the special. Like, he's talking about the woke mob and the woke audience and this woke culture. He is. I mean, he is like, he's become safe. In terms of, like, he doesn't. He's, to me, pandering to a certain audience that, like, he's the conversation, the topics he was talking about. They're like, like, he used to relate a lot of stuff with his family and how he was, his upbringing and growing up, and make those connections. Uh, when you have tens of millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars, it's hard to not going to make those same connections. And again, I think that so he had like a 10-year gap between specials. Kill the Messenger and Tambourine. Kill the Messenger came out in 08. Tambourine came out in 2018. And he was out the game a couple of times for 3 to 4 years at a time. You cannot make up that time with comedy. Comedy is, and I heard Godfrey and T.K. Kirkland talking about this. They were basically saying that the comics that stay at the top of the game are the ones who are constantly evolving, constantly studying. This is what comedy is. This is why if Eddie Murphy got back into it, it would be a disaster. He's been out the game far too long. He's been out like 30 plus years in terms of stand up. He can't, like, that guy is that the Eddie Murphy raw, the Eddie Murphy delirious. He wouldn't even do those type of jokes anymore. But he, like, people get excited about him saying, talk with the Chris Rock, talking about Will Smith and Chris Rock with that joke, and that joke was horrible at the Golden Globes he did. It was a horrible joke. That's why no, Eddie needs to sit down and never get on the stage again for stand up. That's it's over. But in comedy, you cannot once you get off when you're out of rhythm, when you've been away, even Chappelle, when Chappelle first came back, he was getting booed when he first came back off the hiatus that he had. I don't care who you are, you have to constantly stay in the gym for comedy. It's that from a mental standpoint. And those guys who are at the top right now, they are constantly working, tour in, tour out, club in and club out, whether it's Godfrey, Bill Burr, Andrew Schultz, those guys are like they're grinding. They you hear about them. They are all over the place as far as their touring and and as far as some of the content that they're constantly creating. They're not they have podcasts and things of that nature. It's a muscle, and if you don't use that muscle, that muscle gets weak. So you can even go back to when George Carlin, those guys, like how many specials and tours did George Carlin do during his career? Like he wasn't taking breaks. But again, the game is different. It's so much money in entertainment right now that it can water down the artistry in rap, in comedy, and various others, various other forms of entertainment. You don't even have to be a stand-up comedian to make it anymore in comedy. You could be an internet sensation. You could be a YouTube sensation. You could be an Instagram sensation. There are many pathways to get into the comedy game, and a lot of stand-up comedy comedians comedians don't respect it. Like they don't want to be mistaken. Like Godfrey, don't call. There are people that call stand-up comedians that Godfrey says no, they are not stand-up comedians. You may be able to crack some jokes and be able to get on the internet, Twitter, what have you. That doesn't make you a comedian. So the true stand-up comedians are very protective of that stage and of that title. But in regards to Chris Rock, yeah, Chris Rock is one of the great stand-up comedians of all time. I'm not trying to take anything away from Chris Rock's legacy. His legacy is cemented, period. But he is no longer that guy. He's not. I would not pay to see Chris Rock. I wouldn't pay to see him. You doing jokes. I mean, you in your show doing a joke saying your parents taught you not to fight in front of white people. I mean, my good, like, oh my good, like you might as well put out some tap shoes. Like, geez, like that's how you end, and then drop the mic. That's how you end your show. So look, he had a couple of moments in the show, but you never got that moment. It's like that moment or moments where you was like, oh, this is the Chris Rock. Oh yeah, he got it. He's back. Like no, no, and he's not coming back. That's just the reality of the situation. That's going to wrap it up for this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast. Of course, we have another podcast coming later on this week. Snowfall, of course, will premiere tonight with a big time episode. I may, don't hold me to this. I might put a podcast out, do a podcast after the show. I doubt it, and put it out tomorrow. And put it out tomorrow afternoon or morning. More than likely, I'm going to do a podcast tomorrow and then put it out tomorrow. Do a podcast tomorrow afternoon and put it out tomorrow evening. More likely, like I have to. But maybe it depends on my energy after watching the show and what have you. But regardless, you're gonna get two podcasts this week from me. This one, and of course, the Snowfall podcast, season 6, episode 4, which we call Project Boy. So it's supposed to be a big time episode. We'll see what happens. I will be I will be talking to you about it, and we will be definitely putting that out there before the week is out, before Thursday is out. So stay tuned for that. Have a great rest of your evening. So long.